Welcome to Blender to Reality episode 2. And it's a beautiful day to be creative. Today we're going to be creating a functional art toy. So if you didn't know, I have a tutorial called Blender is a Piece of Cake. We're going to be taking that cake slice and turning it into just a cute little guide that's going to hold our pen. That's right, after this video, you're going to have your own art toy that will also hold your pen. And before we get into this week's tutorial, be sure to like and subscribe down below. And we're growing so fast right now, it's incredible, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. And let's keep going down this journey and bring more creativity into this world. So we'll be taking that cake slice and turning it into a little character and giving it some functionality to be able to hold a pen. I just thought it'd be a cute little desk toy. And it's going to help us with our 3D modeling skills and teach us more about how to 3D print our models. I'll also be going over what you need to do to make sure your model is ready for the 3D printer, so what modifiers you need to apply, how to apply a Boolean, if there's multiple parts to your art toy, and then we're going to slice the slice up and get it over to the 3D printer. So that's enough waiting, let's jump into Blender and get creative. Wow! So to make this art toy pen holder, we're going to need to open up our cake file again, and I'm going to duplicate one of the cake slices and set it to a new collection for 3D printing, because we're going to transform this cake into a little guy. Make him just to a little guy. So first we're going to have to dissect this a little bit, take the fork out, and we're going to rotate the cake slice. That way it's sitting on the edge piece of it. Rotate it and place it into position onto the plate. Now that it's in position, let's add some character to this cake slice. So I'm going to add the eyes now, and I start out with an icosphere, and then in edit mode I delete half of it. Taking the outer edge right here, I extrude it out a little bit, then fill in with F. And I inset that flat face. That way it'll create a good Boolean later. So now let's place our eyes on the cake and add a mirror modifier and size them up. Once they're to size, let's place them on the cake, and then now let's add in a mouth. I start with a cube and add a subdivision modifier to it. And then in edit mode, I scale it on the X, add some loop cuts. I scale it on the Y too, that way I can have a flat side for creating the Boolean of it. And with proportional editing, we can adjust it a little bit to make it a smile. Add more loop cuts. And now that we have our smile piece, we can place it on our cake slice. And now we're going to need to adjust our particle system for the sprinkles. That way there's no overlapping sprinkles in the eye socket or inside the mouth or whatever like that. Before we adjust the particle system, we're going to need to remesh our cake. I bring it to a 0.018, and then I need to redo our weight map for the sprinkles. After remeshing it, I added in a little more cake texture to get a better feel for it and smooth out the centerpiece where the frosting would be. And then in weight paint mode, I created the sprinkle weight map again. And when I was creating this, I was thinking of the sprinkles almost as if it was his eyebrows and hair and maybe even a sprinkle beard for this cake slice. When you take objects and normal everyday things and want to make them into characters, I highly recommend to just have fun with it and just experiment. And if you find yourself sitting there smiling and enjoying the process, well, you're on the right track. Now that we have our weight painting done, we can go ahead and add in our particle system again. And I'm thinking the placement of all of our sprinkles is looking pretty good. I can see the eyebrows and its little sprinkle beard now. And now we can add in Boolean modifiers for the eyes and the mouth. I retextured his eyes to give him a little more character and a little more personality. Doesn't he look like a happy little cake? Now let's put a fork in it because it's almost done. All that's left now for the modeling stage of this is to create a almost fitting for the plate so the cake will fit on top of it. And to do so, I just took the geometry that we already have from the plate. I inset some of the faces, that way we can create a cone shape in the middle here. And that cube there is just for reference on size. When creating geometry that you plan on to make a Boolean, it's really good to have a lot of faces. That way you have the smoothest cutout possible. And look at that, beautiful Boolean. Now the modeling's done for this art toy, let's get it ready for the 3D printer. Now that our art toy pen holder is modeled and sculpted out, let's go ahead and get it ready for the 3D printer and apply some of these modifiers. So first thing what I want to do is readjust this fork to almost support a pen that's being held inside the cake. So to start, let's take off these Boolean modifiers for the fork and plate. With our fork selected, we can rotate on the local Y by pressing Y twice. Next, I want to make the placement for the plate into the cake a little bigger. That way I'm not going to have to sand so much when it comes to processing. So let's hide our cake slice. And what we can do is with face select on, let's grab this cone here. Alt shift click these interior rows and get that last face. Now shift D and separate selection with P. With our new selection, let's go ahead and just scale it up a little bit. We could bring it up on the X. And in edit mode, let's have this bottom loop selected. Extrude in the Z just a little bit. And now we can scale that up. Add in some loop cuts here. Go back to object mode. And now we're going to do something similar but with the fork prongs. So with our fork selected, let's hop into edit mode. Toggle X-ray. With face select on, let's select these faces, all the ones that are going into our cake. And with X-ray mode, we can make sure that we're selecting all faces. Now shift D and separate with P. Back in object mode and toggle X-ray. Let's grab our new selection and hop back into edit mode. And in edit mode, when you have multiple objects like this, you can hover over one and push L to select one. And let's separate each one. Now reset the origin to each one's geometry. And now select each copy, and up here, let's transform on individual origins and scale up. Now let's Command J to join the object. Let's apply new booleans using our duplicated objects now. Now with those new booleans on there, let's go ahead and apply them. The last thing what we'll need to do before it's ready for slicing is add in a stylus penhole boolean and size it down. Before we size it down though, I'd like to join and remesh the sprinkles to the cake itself. So each sprinkle has a subdivision modifier on it. What we'll need to do first is apply all those. So with our sprinkle collection selected, let's go to select objects, and holding Alt, let's go ahead and apply. Select objects from our sprinkle collection and select our cake object last, and Command J to join. Let's jump into Sculpt Mode to remesh. Command R to remesh. Now the sprinkles are formed to our cake. Let's go back to Object Mode and make everything appear again. And now I'm going to size it down to more of a smaller art toy, but you can make it any size that will fit onto your 3D printer. So what I'm using for reference is an Eggo blueberry waffle art toy that I have on my desk here. And this art toy is about 2.5 inches tall, or 63.8 millimeters. And since this isn't just going to be a desk toy, it'll actually be a pen holder as well. I think I want to go a little bigger than 2.5 inches tall. I'm thinking more around 3 inches or 3.5 inches tall. So for 3 inches, that would be 76.2 millimeters, or 3.5 inches would be 88.9 millimeters. So to make sure that we're sizing our cake down to size and we can keep an eye on our dimensions here, all we'll need to do is select everything and make sure the cake is our last selected object. And before we do anything, let's make sure we switch our transform point to median point again. And now we can start scaling down, and we want to keep an eye on this Y dimension here. And 88.9 millimeters would be 0.0889 meters. Let's keep scaling down. And if you hold shift, we can scale in smaller increments. Now our Y is at 0.889. That is about 3.5 inches tall. Let's bring it back down to our center here. Now that we're to size with all these pieces, we can apply scale with Control A and apply scale. So now we can add a Boolean in for the pen. And again, for reference, I just use something around my desk, something I use almost every day. I'm using my Huion stylus that I use for my graphics tablet, and I'm going to measure the widest part of the pen, and the measurement for that is 12.8 millimeters. Now all we need to do is create a 3D pen in the basic form. So Shift A, let's add in a cone. And 12.8 millimeters would be 0.0128 meters. And just so sanding's not a pain later, let's go ahead and scale it up just a little bit. I'm going to scale it up to 0.014 meters. Let's hop into edit mode and grab this bottom loop and extend on the Z. Add in a bunch of loop cuts here. Let's grab this bottom loop, and with proportional editing on, we can scale this down. Now let's place our pen to create the Boolean. I want to match the angle of the fork, so that way our pen will balance onto it. Now let's create a Boolean for the pen. With our cake selected, let's go to Generate Modifier and Boolean. Select our pen object, and we can hide our pen to make sure our Boolean's looking good. Looks great to me. Now we can apply this Boolean. Now I would recommend saving a copy of this file. That way you have a version of your file before you started applying all your modifiers, and then you have a version of your file that's ready for your 3D printer. Now our pen holder is ready for our 3D printer, and the last thing we need to do is create STL files for each piece of this art toy. And to do that, we'll just need to reset our origins and then place each piece separated in a file, and then create a STL file for each individual piece. Now each piece is separated, and we'll just have to hide each piece and create an STL file for each individual piece. With your object selected, just go to File and Export STL. Now that we have all of our files, let's jump into the Photon Workshop and slice this up. The 3D printer that I have is a resin 3D printer. It's the Photon Mono M5S Pro by Anycubic. Anycubic provides you their own slicing software when you buy a 3D printer, which is pretty nice. And for a free-ish slicing software, it actually works really good. There are other slicing softwares out there that seem really awesome, and I'd love the opportunity to try them. And when I get the chance to, I will for sure make tutorials on them. But I know other 3D printing companies provide their own slicing softwares too. And there's also ChichuBox and Lychee slicing software. And from my understanding, a lot of the basics when it comes to slicing are relatively the same. So you can still learn how to prepare your files even watching specifically in the Anycubic slicing software. So with the new slicing window open, let's go ahead and import our models. So let's import all of our models. Select all of them. Let's repair that cake model. And the automatic repair in Anycubic actually works really well. And I also wish I really knew why slicing programs imported models so tiny, because it really makes you feel like your model didn't import correctly because it doesn't seem like anything's in here. All you need to do is just make sure your object list has your objects in it. And we can scale up each piece, that way we can see it. Let's start with our cake piece. And to make sure our model is accurate to size, we can compare our Z-axis here, and in Blender, we want it to match our Y-axis. So what we'll need is a 88.9 millimeters, and with uniform scaling on, we can go ahead and just input that. Let's rotate our model on the Z, move it up 5 millimeters, and rotate on the X. And we want to make sure our face is the one that's outward, and no supports will be on the front face of our art toy. We can now move this one out of the way and move on to the next model. So let's move on to the plate, and in Blender our plate size is 169.5 millimeters. Let's increase the scale to 169.5 millimeters. And then same deal with the cake piece. Let's move it up 5 millimeters and rotate on the X. Let's move it out of the way just a little bit. We'll reorganize everything once everything is to size. So now for the fork, check Blender's size. I'll want to match the X dimension in the slicing program to our Y dimension in Blender. So 113 millimeters. And again, move it up 5 millimeters. Let's rotate it on the Z and rotate it on the X. Let's move it over, and now the eyes. So for the eyes, we can match the X to the X. which would be 14.9 millimeters. Now with all of our models to size, we can reorganize to fit within our printing area. Now our print area is organized. All we need to do is hollow out some of the models and add our supports. So with our cake, let's hollow that out. These are the settings I use. Let's hollow out the plate. And then lastly, let's hollow out the eyes, which you probably could get away with making them solid, but I always hollow them out. Now with everything selected, let's add in some supports. I use the light support script setting. It actually provides a really good support system, and when it comes to sanding off the blemishes or the nibs from the supports, it's actually not too bad. Let's push generate automatic supports. Now we just need to make sure all models are within the print area and no overlapping when it comes to printing. Let's just move it over. And now it should be within our print area. I'm going to save a slicing of this before I slice it. That print came out beautiful. And I can't tell you enough how bad I needed that print to be successful. I was coming off of a day of almost wasting a full bottle of resin trying to figure out how to print that dang light switch cover. So as you can see in the video, I was pretty thrilled to see that that print came out as good as it did. Also, congratulations on making a functional art toy. That's awesome, and it's going to look amazing where you put it. So today I hope you learned a little bit more about Blender and Sculpt Mode, and I hope you enjoyed watching us take this model from the screen to the 3D printer. In next week's tutorial, we're going to be finishing up and processing this print and get it painted. So be sure to like and subscribe down below and hit that bell. That way you don't miss out on any future tutorial or any art videos or check-ins I have coming out. I just want to thank you so much for watching, and if you made it this far, I truly, truly appreciate it. The channel is growing so much, and I couldn't be any more thankful for the support that I'm getting. It feels very validating, and I feel like I'm on the right path and I'm doing what I'm meant to do. And I enjoy creating and teaching others how to be creative, and that this world needs more art and creativity in the world. And until next week, stay creative and stay safe out there. Peace. Now I kind of want to slice a cake.